Good morning. It is Tuesday, March the 23rd, and this is The Drill. Thank you. And now for the daily declaration for spiritual warfare. And for March 22nd. The enemy, let's see here. You will be sober and vigilant against your adversary. My child, remember that you are not living in darkness, but I have made you aware of the evil schemes of the devil. Stay awake and watchful, for you should not be surprised by anything the enemy may try to do. Because you belong to the day, put on faith and love as a breastplate, and wear the helmet of salvation when you attempt to make war against Satan. With your mind alert and sober, set your hope on the grace that will be revealed to you when my Son returns to bring you home to heaven. Be holy in all that you do. Live out your time here as a foreigner. Purify yourself with my holy word. Resist the devil and stand firm in your faith. Prayer declaration. I am sober and vigilant against my adversary, the devil. I am prepared to be victorious over his evil attacks, and I have armed myself with the breastplate of faith and love and the helmet of salvation. Because of the salvation of Christ, I am able to see the evil schemes and tactics of Satan before they are able to do harm to me or my family. He may cause me to suffer, but he will never be able to overcome me or take me out of the protection of God, my Father. And amen. That is the daily declaration for spiritual warfare. And when I come back, I'm going to be reading parts of chapter 10 from Russell Kirk's book, The Concise Guide to Conservatism. Thank you. And Russell Kirk's Concise Guide to Conservatism. And let's see, here it is, chapter 10. And chapter 10 is about education. So we have to go all the way back here. And let's see, there we are. Conservatives and education. For the reflecting conservative, the purpose of education is clear. That purpose is to develop the mental and moral faculties of the individual person for the person's own sake. Yet the conservative does not forget that the essential aim and the chief benefit of formal education is to make people intelligent and good. But to the modern radical who is faithful to his own first principles, formal education is something quite different from what the conservative thinks education should be. To the radical, communist, fascist, or socialist, or any type of radical ideologue, the school is an instrument of power. It is a means for indoctrinating the young with what the radical believes to be the concept of the good society. The more consistent and forthright radical educators like Professor Theodore Bromfeld confess this truth and urge us to convert the schools into propaganda devices for teaching the doctrines that, quote, everybody belongs to everybody else, unquote, and that one person is as good as another or maybe a little better. Quite candidly, they call themselves social reconstructionists, educators who would employ the schools to build a new collectivistic society. When such theories as these are baldly presented to the American people, the public promptly rejects them. But what the American public has not yet rejected is something more subtle, less candid, and in the long term, perhaps as dangerous: the educational notions of the late John Dewey. Sound sense and fallacy are blended in Dewey's theories, but the fallacies have become almost official educational dogma in our country, while the sound sense either has been forgotten or has lost its significance because of altered social circumstances. Dewey desired the state schools to become a means for making the American population homogeneous. What I'm trying to do is suggest that the attitude toward formal education which the intelligent conservative ought to take. The intelligent conservative combines a disposition to preserve with an ability to reform, and our schools desperately need reforming. Despite all the talk about education for democracy, they seem to be educating for mass submission, dreary secular indoctrination is substituted for the inquiring mind. With the medieval schoolmen, the conservative is of the opinion that moderns are dwarfs, standing upon the shoulders of giants, able to see further than our intellectual ancestors, only because we are supported by the great bulk and strength of their achievement. Yet, despite all of these faults in 20th century American education, the conservative knows that our system possesses still some considerable merits. Conspicuous among those virtues is the diversity and competition surviving among our educational institutions. Centralization of any sort is suspect to the conservative, and centralization of the educational establishment is one of the most dangerous forms of centralization. One of the works of conservative reform must be to return to right reason, a restoration of honorable disciplines in education, and the first step in this reform must be a recognition of the enduring principle that education is intended for the elevation of the mind and conscience of the individual human person. And that was chapter 10, and I read basically what I'm doing is topic, sentence, and sometimes a little bit further in each paragraph. And that way, there's a lot of books that need reading that the true conservative should read and be familiar with. And that's a good way to plow through them, so to speak, is at least get the topic sentence of each paragraph, and you can get through a 200-page book in a couple of hours or less. So, back in a minute. Thank you. The true conservative is a thinking person and does not get swept up in hysteria. And one of the hysterias that's going on right now that a lot of so-called conservatives are getting swept up in is something called cancel culture. It struck me when I saw this on the back of somebody's car, something about cancel culture, and it was showing pictures of the drawings of various cartoon characters, Pepe Le Pew and others. And I'd heard rumors to the effect that Pepe Le Pew and some of these other cartoon characters have come into some sort of disrepute, allegedly, and that they were being subjected to something called cancel culture. And it struck me, if we're going to fight cancel culture, how do we do this? Somebody has to explain to me, how do we do that? How do we fight cancel culture? Okay, especially if we don't even know who it is that's promoting cancel culture. Who's in charge of cancel culture? Who's the leader? Is it Nancy Pelosi? Should we go to Nancy Pelosi and tell her to stuff it with cancel culture? Should we go to Nancy Pelosi and say, I don't give a damn what you think about Pepe Le Pew. I like Pepe Le Pew. I'm gonna watch Pepe Le Pew, and I'm gonna let my kids watch Pepe Le Pew. Or is it Chuck Schumer? Or is it somebody else in politics? Or maybe it is an individual that runs some sort of a cultural group. Maybe it's BLM. But who runs cancel culture? Who even came up with the term cancel culture? What does it mean? What is it supposed to mean? And again, who runs it? It is a completely arbitrary movement, meaning it is a movement that simply doesn't exist. It's a movement that exists in the left's imagination, but they are asking the conservatives to realize. And when you react, or overreact, underreact, whatever, but if you react to this weird fantasy, this psychologism of cancel culture, you are realizing their fantasy. Cancel culture is something they want to happen. It doesn't really exist. But they know if they want to make it exist, there's one sure way to do that, and that is to create resistance. They come out and start talking about canceling Pepe Le Pew, and all conservatives come and says, you can't do that, you can't do that. And by resisting, they go ahead and realize a movement that never existed and shouldn't exist at all. Think your way through this. Every time you come up with you hear something, some weird rumblings going on Twitter or anywhere else, ask yourself the questions. With cancel culture, what is it? What's the definition of cancel culture? Who runs cancel culture? If you can't come up with the answers to it, then ignore it. Most of what the left does should be ignored, because what the left it comes up with is arbitrary. Arbitrary claims must be ignored. Because if you don't, if you provide resistance to something that isn't real, you reify it. You realize it. You, the conservative, make it real. And you'll end up becoming your own worst enemy. Think about it. Thank you. A lot of talk recently in the rumor mills about the border and what's happening or not happening on the border. And it seems that from what I've seen and heard from the rumor mills, is that the current administration is, or current regime, that's probably a better way to put it, is coming around to Donald Trump's way of thinking and is stopping immigration and immigrants. They're just doing it using a slightly different language, but basically they're telling the Hondurans, the Guatemalans, the El Salvadorans, and the Mexicans, stop. We can't deal with this. We're overwhelmed, which was predictable. We could have known this because we've seen this before. So, but it still comes down to what is the essence of what is the solution for immigration, the immigration problem? That's you and me. You and I are the ones that are going to stop this. We're going to have to. The politicians are incapable. They're incapable of doing anything sensible. You and I are going to have to use common sense, solve the problem. Number one way we do this, what do you do once you see some illegal activity happens? You, quote, drop a dime, unquote. You call the authorities. You call the police department. The same thing applies here. When you're out and about and you're dealing with people, and a lot of these aliens will come out and tell you flat out, oh yeah, I'm here illegally. You hear that, you know that this person's here illegally, you drop a dime. Now, if you can't be bothered to do that, you're scared and intimidated and all that, fine. Then tell your friends and your relatives and some of the other left-wing yahoos I'm going to drop a dime. If I see illegal immigrants, if I see or hear or know of any illegal immigration, I'm going to drop a dime and call ICE. And so you and I have to get involved and do that. Second thing that we can do, quit hiring them. The only reason that they come here is because they think that you and I are going to tolerate them. They know if they can get past the border, if they can get past the government, so to speak, that the rank and file American will shrug their shoulders, or they assume that, will shrug their shoulders and meekly accept them into the fold. We can't do that. We can't do that. We have to treat them like the pariahs they are. Treat them like what they really are is fugitives. They're fugitives from justice. And this notion that they're going to get a fast track to citizenship, they don't want to be citizens. All they want to do is use this country so that they can make money to send home, and so they may decide to stay here long enough to draw a pension, get Social Security, and then go home and live like kings in El Salvador or Guatemala. Now fine, if you want to do that with a green card. The green card holders want to stay here and then return home and live large on their pensions and Social Security, have at it, because you're here legally. But if you don't have the green card, get out. Ultimately, also what's going to happen here and need to happen is that the socialists end up destroying themselves. And they will do so here, because it is going to be ultimately the recent immigrants that are going to stand up and say no more. We're sick of this. Because there's no more jobs to be had. We're full. Every day, it's a new corner, there's somebody selling flowers. Somebody selling flowers. It's just, unbelievable. It just keeps spreading and spreading. Why? Because there's nothing else to do. There's only room for so many gardeners. There's only room for so many sheetrock hangers. Okay? And and you're going to find that it's going to be a lot of hostility because there's only so many apartments around, and there's only so many families willing to squeeze in another family. If you're living 2 or 3 families to an apartment, what are you going to squeeze in a fourth? When do you get to the point where the illegals themselves say, we've had enough, stop it? And I see that being the case. And that, again, I think there's going to be a lot of... We've seen the Hispanic backlash with Donald Trump. He got 36% of the Hispanic vote in 2020. And I suspect that that's just going to continue, that Republicans are going to get bigger and bigger parts of the illegal alien vote. As far as the farmers are concerned, because I still hear about that too. Well, farmers need illegal aliens to pick this. And my attitude is, if you want to, the only way you can conduct your business is to break the law, then you know better than the mafia, and you should go to hell. Okay? The world's a much smaller place than it used to be. If I can't get my fruits and vegetables from Salinas, I'll get them from Australia. I'll get them from South Africa. I'll get them from Argentina, etc., etc., etc. There's lots. You'll notice when you go to the produce section that it seems that there's never any off season. Normally, let's say there's a season for tomatoes, but there's tomatoes on the shelf, so to speak, year round, because it's not always American tomatoes. You might be getting the tomatoes from Mexico or from another part of the world. We get fruits and vegetables, meats as well, from all over the world. So if the farmers in the United States of America don't give a damn about this country other than the money it can provide them, then again, go to hell. And I'll buy my vegetables, my fruits, my meats from somebody else, from somewhere else. Thank you. That brings me to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. Until next time, be honest, be smart, and be beautiful. And this is Ron, and that's The Drill.